submitted in advance of the meeting. And I mentioned this already, and I think we shared this over email with you all. We ask that you review those comments, at least in advance of the meeting, and periodically they're all made available to the public, so please do that. And then if there are comments from the public that the public would like landfill task force members to look at, those just need to be submitted in advance of the meeting, and we'll compile those the day of. Okay. How does this sit with you all? Any questions or concerns?
Are you asking us as members?
Yes.
Okay, one of my questions is, before every meeting, there's going to be opportunity for people to submit their questions or comments?
Mhm.
Okay,
Throughout this whole process. Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
all right.
So that's open, the internet's open 24 hours a day. People can.
And then that's when we're expected to review. I guess I'm jumping ahead. All right.
We'll package up the comments and send those out a week in advance, just to give you all a week to review that, but I'm sure there's comments that are gonna come in between that week and when we have our meeting, so, but we'll bring those printed out to the meeting too.
Okay.
The point is just for us to, you wanna cover that?
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit. I'm David Frank. I'm the Director of Environmental Services for the town of Erie. And I'm kind of here on behalf of town staff and the local government. The comments that come in, they'll be posted to the website unfiltered. So anybody as members of the public can review all of the comments that are being submitted continually, including members of the task force. So they'll of course be packaged and provided a week in advance, but if you're bored on a Tuesday night and you're like, wonder if there's new comments, you can hop on and read them.
And the meeting summaries and the recordings will be available online, so people, I think ideally can, watch that after the meeting occurs too.
And yeah, again, apologies for the technical difficulties tonight. We planned on being in the much smaller community room, but obviously there's a huge amount of public interest, which is fantastic, but did cause us to shift over to this other room, which yeah, took us a minute to set up. So apologies again for that, but thanks everyone for bearing with us.
Thanks, David. We'll go task force member by task force member, and give you time and space to kind of share your individual perspectives on the landfill. But I don't want to lose that we had almost 40 individuals apply for the landfill. And in the application, you recall, we asked people, what do you think some of the issues are? And do you have any ideas to address those issues? And we shouldn't lose that. I think this is a good view into some of the public concerns and some of the ideas that people brought forth. So these are probably not new to anyone here, but we heard in the applications some issues around increased traffic, roadway hazards, aesthetic impacts, litter, environment and health concerns, overuse and reliance on the landfill. And then this is a different theme, but the need for transparency and community engagement. And let me pause on that one. If anyone on the task force feels like the public comment process that we have is not meeting the needs of the community, or that we need to incorporate those voices in a different way, we're open to that. So you know me and you know Colin, you didn't get to introduce yourself. Colin Johnson.
Hi.
We're open to that. Some ideas: relocate the entrance, sufficiently clean and maintain the roadway, incorporate features and practices to improve aesthetics, increase community engagement, respond to community needs, and reduce fees for nearby residents. So I think this is a nice window into all the different issues and ideas that folks brought in their applications, and we didn't want to lose this either. So let's go around. Again, unfortunately, we're missing Michael and Jeff. We'll check in with them after. I don't think they're on, right? We're not connected. Okay. Lisa, would you mind starting? Sure. Okay. So the prompts we have: what's important to you? What do you think is important for Erie residents? What would you like the landfill task force to prioritize? And what information would you like from Waste Connections?
I think one thing that I always noticed was the traffic, the roadway hazards. It's kind of combined in a couple of these issues that came up. But I think more importantly, it's the environment, the health and safety concerns. But also, what can the landfill be used to help on energy issues, especially? I think that's a really great project that they have going there. So those, I think those are covered my main issues of wanting to get involved and learn more.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you need from Waste Connections? Just top of mind, what you're really curious about, any kind of operational issues, and this helps us throughout the process, but also as they present later.
Everything. I mean, I've never been to the landfill. My husband has, but I haven't dropped anything off, so.
Okay. So look at it. Okay, anything else to share just about things you've heard from your community members or?
No.
Thanks, Lisa. Scott?
Number of things. What's important to me is I think transparency from Waste Connections as to how long this landfill is going to be open, especially if we expand the landfill. So that's going to expand years more of this operation. I'd like to know how much revenue it actually brings into the town of Erie and if it's worth it to the residents to continue dealing with what we deal with for that revenue. And if I thought at one point in the initial paperwork that we had gotten, there was talk of expanding the hours of operation and the days of operation. There, right now, I believe it's currently 5 days plus half day on Saturday. And I believe the closing time is like 5 o'clock. It's like 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. or something. Randy, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's Monday to Friday at 6 a.m. We open in the morning and then we close the landfill at 5, but we can operationally be working to cover and do those kind of things till 8 o'clock actually till 10 o'clock. We're usually out of there pretty quick. And then Saturdays it's 6 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon, and we're closed on Sundays.
Okay, and what is also the parameters for when you close down with wind? Because it's never windy there. We know that.
In fact, we've closed, I think 4 times just this beginning part of the year for wind. And what the permit requirement is, if we get sustained winds 10 miles per hour, 40 miles an hour that are sustained, then we need to close landfill to any of the trash trucks that are coming in, anything that would have blowing litter. If we get gusts that are sustained over 50 miles an hour, then we'd have to close at that.
And what is your frequency for cleaning the adjacent roadways? I know Sheridan is a mess.
Excuse me?
What is your frequency for cleaning the areas of the sides of the adjacent roadways, the
Well,
approach roads?
County Road 5, County Road 4, up into that area, we're usually out there every day with our sweepers. If it gets rain, we get muddy.
I'm not talking necessarily about the sweepers. I'm talking about all the crap that flies out of the trucks and is along.
We have laborers that are patrolling that just about every day.
So Scott, are you-
Usually, I know we have at least 2 guys that will walk all the way from the grocery store down Sheridan Road and then County Road 5. We make sure to do that before the end of the weekend or the end of the week, so that stuff's not there on the weekend.
So noise, sorry, litter,
Yep.
or is that something you're seeing
Oh,
day to day?
constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly, because the loads are not secured. I mean, some of the commercial loads are, obviously, because they're required. But there's a lot of people that are not commercial operators, you know, Jose's Landscaping or whatever, comes in with a trailer and crap's flying out all the way down Sheridan, all the way down 4. And it'll sit, and with the wind, it blows into the neighborhood surrounding it, it blows in the streets. It's, I think it could be done, if you need to be our neighbors, which obviously we are, I think we could do a much better job of working together to minimize that visual impact on the people that surround you. Because like I said, it's always windy. It may not always be 40 miles an hour, but hell, today it was 25 miles an hour for a good part of the day. That's enough to blow stuff all over the place. Doesn't need to be 40. So some of what I think we need to prioritize is how, if you're going to stay in business, how can you be better neighbors to the town of Erie? And I would again like to, how much revenue you guys bring into the town. We'd like to know that, if it's worthwhile for the town to even keep it open.
So some
mean, I know
questions
you have
around
a contract.
revenue and litter, those are important. Yeah, revenue, litter, anything else?
No, I think I covered it. Thank you.
You did. Okay, anything you've heard from neighbors, community members that's outside of the revenue and litter issue areas?
Anything that I've heard?
Yeah.
I hear a lot. I'm on the Vista Ridge Metro District Board. I used to be on the HOA board. And I do go to all the Vista Ridge HOA meetings. It comes up almost all the time.
The landfill, yeah.
Because our proximity to it is closer pretty much until they build out Westerly and Sunset and do the new developments. We're as close as anybody. And most of us, no fault of yours, Randy, or your people, but we're lied to by our realtors who said it was gonna be closing in 2 years when I bought 17 and a half years ago. That we would never see it over the tops of the houses. And now we can put a ski lift on it and, you know, it actually affects weather patterns if you're into meteorology, which my son is a meteorologist. The size of that landfill does affect the weather in the surrounding areas. So
Yeah.
we do hear a lot. We hear a lot of complaints about the stuff that blows out because the west weather comes, the wind tends to primarily come from the west and the north. And so we get a lot of it in the smell. There are days that you don't want to have your windows open because it's like living next to a dumpster. And it's foul. And we keep building, the town keeps approving developments closer and closer and closer. And you wonder if those poor people have a clue what they're gonna be getting into, like Westerly and Sunset and these others. And if whatever Red Feather or whatever that is, if that ever gets built, I know it was just turned down, but they come back every year. So I think it's only fair to the people that are still coming in, because one of my questions is, what does Erie want to be known for? Is a residential community, is a second tier suburb from Denver and Boulder, or the landfill? Right now, this part of town is known for the landfill. So.
Thank you. All right, Sherry?
Just a little bit about my background, which might help explain why I'm sitting in this seat. I was a former environmental lawyer, and I actually worked on the Superfund remediation project at Lowry Landfill for a number of clients. And then I worked with an environmental consulting firm that was developing a landfill in Southern California. So I find this area fascinating, particularly the overlap between operations and environmental potential hazards and risks, and how the operations can be basically focused to address those things and concerns. And that's one of the reasons I'm here. Also, I just mentioned earlier that I've only been in Erie 1 year, and I can tell you it's because of a personal circumstance in a relationship, and I had to find a new house. But Erie was not at the top of my list to move to, and it was primarily because of the oil and gas development in the area and the landfill. Primarily, I just saw that it was kind of like an eyesore, just visually, but I'm here to really hopefully enhance the communication between the neighborhoods and the operator, and just make sure that they understand that we're all people and we have concerns and voices need to be heard.
And, okay, thank you, Sherry.
Mhm.
And I noted kind of balancing the hazards and the risk, and then the communication between the neighborhoods. Anything else specific to landfill operations, which might?
Oh, I have a lot of questions. I'm not sure when to get into those. But, I share Scott's concern about whenever there is an industrial operation in a community, there are impacts that affect the economics of the area. Not only for city operations and what they need to do to maintain the city, but also, property values can be impacted. And I just really like to get a sense of how much the operations, Waste Connections, actually contributes to the town economically, financially, what they do. Do they create parks in the area? Do they do any kind of involvement in the community to say, we're partners with you, just like all the other residents?
I am hearing a theme of partnerships, and I don't think we need to get into it today. It will be a theme of community benefits and just the partnership that can grow between the landfill and the town and its residents. So I think that's a nice theme to mark too. That's important. Okay, before we move on, anything else, Sherry?
I have specific questions, and maybe just at some point in time, maybe the site tour, we might be able to get into those things like depth to the groundwater table, how many groundwater well monitoring wells you have, how often they're sampled, that kind of thing, just to get a sense. And also how much you can flare the methane versus actually put it to beneficial use, and what are the uses of that. I'm curious about those kinds of things.
And we're taking notes, and we'll get to that on that today. And we do have a tour that I know everyone can participate in, so that's a great spot to ask questions. Okay. All right, thanks, Sherry. Cheryl?
Okay, I'm gonna go off my list because I was raised military and worked for the Pentagon and I gotta do it this way. So just my brain. What's important to you? The very first thing that I told myself as my motto is do no harm for anybody, children, adults, the elderly. And what's important to me is to protect the longtime communities of Erie, not just the town of Erie, but all of us that have contributed and made Erie what it is today. Before the new houses came in, living out on Road 6, out in Rancho, we were the town of Erie. So it's just the new housing developments filled in the gaps. But I want to protect everyone, their small businesses and their homes and their health. And what I would like to prioritize is to ensure that no changes will harm every existing Erie community.
Mhm.
So that's every house, the residents, and our businesses. Because small businesses is an American way. You support small businesses, and many of the residents have small businesses. So it is everything like we've all talked about. We all have a shared thing in common. We're worried about our real estate values, but we were there before the dump was there. And we have put up with so much and never raised a fit. When the hub came in and Erie made money, we didn't complain about the size of it. We just wanted to make sure our homes weren't going to be destroyed with the weight of the truck or the traffic going down. When I-25 went from a state highway and is now quadrupled in size, we didn't complain about that either. We understood it was already there. Like my husband and I, when we bought our house, we knew it, we deal with it. But those are all important things that I feel that all of us are concerned about. From what I'm hearing from everybody, that's what we care about. I mean, I have grandchildren that are, all of our kids, with the exception of one, is a resident of Erie. So 5 kids, only one's not here in Erie. So, and as far as the information that I would like from Waste Connections is, what do you have to gain by moving the entrance of the dump from where it's at now? And what options do you have that won't hurt the rural community if you move the entrance?
So I thank you for your thoughtful contributions just on the values of the town of Erie and maintaining or doing what's right for the community, and then the more specific part about the entrance. Yeah. Okay. Was that everything on your list?
Yes,
We're good? Okay.
I'm done.
I'm so happy for you. 4 kids nearby.
Yeah, 4 or 5. Yeah, we would have liked to have all of them here, but
Well, there's always one.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
I mean, I'm kind of in agreement with everything that's already been said, the safety, the litter, small businesses, being a small business owner, so it's just, but definitely kind of with Cheryl on the protecting, like the rural country part of Erie as well, but
When you got to apply, was there anything else that you're like, oh, I really want to serve on the
well, as
task
far as
force,
where the
yeah.
entrance is going to
Entrance,
be,
yeah.
that's important. And yeah, and what are the options? Are there options? It's like, I'm hearing so many things. I don't even know what's what.
Yeah. And that's a really good note, because we were looking at the comments that came in, and I think at least 3 comments just today were about a potential entrance on 6. And my understanding is we're not gonna go into options and things, but my understanding is that's not one of the areas we're looking at. And that's almost beside the point, but it made us think that there might be some information going around that is just not accurate.
Yeah.
So we'd like to put out some FAQs on the website, and if ever there's something you all hear, you're like, I'm hearing everyone talk about this one thing. Is that true? Is that not true? What are the options? Any daylight we can give that in some FAQs or what? So we look to you all to help us. I would say, understand what's really top of mind for folks, what we could easily get out of the way, what good information we could put out there. And that will give people some peace of mind if we can provide that.
May I address that last comment? One of the things I would love to see, just because I'm fairly new to the area, is, this is a great map to give me a perspective of the actual site, but it doesn't give me a perspective of surrounding neighborhoods or list the names of the streets. So I'm just guessing at this point what's what.
And we're gonna bring big foam boards of maps and just get up and mark them up if we need to during our meetings. It will be very kind of geographic based and you're right, because I need to know where the streets are too. But I didn't want to do that today. I wanted to kind of settle into getting to know each other, hearing from you all, hearing from Waste Connections, and not digging down too deeply. So we'll do that in subsequent meetings. Yeah. But if there's anything specific you want to see on the map, Sherry,
Okay,
holler. Yeah.
thank you. It's a long time for some of
So I'm in Vista Point and I have two young kids who are elementary age at Soaring Heights, so I don't want to bus, but I don't want them in middle school.
I get it. We, a lot of us in this room had children that went to school grades, what was it? Preschool through 8th? Yeah, until Erie High School was built in 07. So, yeah, we get it.
Yeah, so that's what I drive on Road 5 every 2 to 4 times. Get to school, we get home from school. So along with Scott, I see the litter. I try to avoid it after it rains because I know I'm guaranteed to need a car wash. I have had a flat tire probably every 6 months. And again, that's certainly not with connection, that could be the construction. However, I don't think it's normal to get a flat tire every 6 months. Or I just find the nails. I'm really focused on the environment. I have a background in environmental science. I want to know more, I guess, from Waste Connections, because I drive it so often. Excuse me, how often I see recycling trucks coming out of there. I don't understand that. Curious about that. What we can do just to reduce the waste going in, like what the community can help with in terms of recycling. You spoke about the litter and the smell, all that same stuff. I think the only thing I've really heard from my neighbors, I haven't gotten out a ton in Vista Point, is split up into 3 phases. I'm in phase 1, so I don't personally back up with the closed landfill, but phase 2 and 3 do. And I've heard a lot from just the Facebook page about what is going on right there. There's bulldozers out there. So I guess I know maybe this is the place to talk about that, but I have seen those questions come up in terms of that closed landfill on the west side of County Road 5.
Are you talking about in the field next to the?
Next to,
Yeah,
Yes.
that's red.
that's Red Hill? Okay,
Has nothing to do with the
Yeah,
okay.
that's actually a capping operation, putting a final cover over the Newhauer landfill, which was where IBM illegally dumped 84,000 gallons of solvents and things back in the 60s. It was nearly a Superfund site. EPA got involved. This should be the final stage before long-term monitoring of that site. CDPH&E, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's been extremely involved in every possible aspect of that project. So that's what the dozers and scrapers are doing out there.
Right.
Nothing to do with Waste Connections or the
No,
closed
just
landfills.
There's
Putting,
pictures
yeah,
of
it's-
Facebook page with what's going on.
yeah,
lots
and
of-
sorry, we in the town probably should do a better job of communicating what's going on out there. It's tough. But this is putting to rest one of the more egregious sins of our fathers that has occurred in years past. So we're glad to see that cap getting done. Yeah.
Was that just a cap in place or did they actually remove the waste?
There was extensive excavation. They dug up, I don't remember how many thousand drums. I'd have to look
Okay.
back through my notes. Yeah, dug up a lot of drums. There was injection of oxidizers to try to break down the nasty of the nasties that didn't get dug up. And the last bit is the evapotranspirative cover, just to keep meteoric rains from
Yeah.
infiltrating down into the groundwater system. I don't want to get deep into that. I just talked about that last week for like 3 hours. So if you're interested, go look on the page. You can hear me talk about that till about midnight or so last week.
But I like Cassie's note though, because that, the community might not distinguish between
Yeah.
waste connections for, and so these are things you see and breathe and smell, and so if you see them, then I'm going to assume the community sees them. There's a echo here, so let us know, and if that could be an FAQ. Our focus is really the recommendations, but also just bringing the community along to the extent we can, so relay that back to the town and to us. Jeff and Michael can hear us, and we need to unmute them, right? Okay.
Can we hear that?
Yes.
I think we can unmute ourselves.
Yeah, so Jeff, I don't know you, Mike, from Michael, is that Jeff or Michael?
This is Jeff.
Jeff, you've been able to hear us from the side, so we'd love to hear from you, your thoughts.
Awesome. Well, I apologize for not being there in person. I'm currently on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, shortly to pick up my daughter from college. By way of background, I was elected in Erie for 4 years from 2016 to 2020. And during that time had a lot of interaction with and about all 3 landfills. I was seated when we discovered the New Hauser landfill and have had previous conversations with Waste Connections. One of the biggest reasons, I as a resident, I have a lot of the same concerns that other people have, but as someone who's been on the back end of some of the conversations, one of my biggest concerns, and one of the things I'd love to see us address, is sort of ambiguity, confusion, and misinformation. Looking back at my own time, most of those conversations happened in executive session or in URA meetings. And so there is no real public record of a lot of the things that happened. One of the big takeaways for me was when the current board was surprised to find the agreement that said at one point the front door was going to move from CR5 to Sheridan. And that was a document that came to our attention in like 2017 and then got lost to the mists of time again. So between that, the Ranch Eggs agreement, agreements with Republic, with Waste Connections, there's this entire history that keeps getting lost over time. And it results in a lot of these same stories coming up over and over again. One of the public comments was stated that the Weld County Board of Commissioners had already voted against this, which is not true. A Weld County Commissioner served on Erie's Urban Renewal Authority and didn't approve it. And because we didn't have unanimous approval at the time, that couldn't proceed to the Board of Trustees or anything else. So there's this popular mythology around it. And as a resident as well, our first house in Grandview in 2002, the landfill was misrepresented to us by KB Home. Our second house in Vista Ridge in 2013, the status of the landfill was misrepresented to us by Ryland Home at the time. I don't know that it was malicious, but there's just no solid record of what is true, what is fact. And I would love for us to be able to help create that record so that at least people understand what the source of truth is. And then secondarily, when we get into questions about moving the front door or where the Blue Jungle lives or any of those kind of things, just trying to help everyone understand that we know that there are multiple competing and overlapping and non-corresponding agreements created with different players over the years. At some point, we just have to move past everyone's got a legal letter that says I get 4 chickens in a pot. We have to work on what is going to be best for all of the stakeholders overall. So in terms of what I would love to see from Waste Connections, frankly, just your help in understanding where things are, and then moreover, participation in helping to find a solution that may not honor the letter of every specific agreement that's hanging out there over the course of 25, 30 years, but one that gets us to a solution that hurts the fewest people and does the best for everyone.
So thank you, Jeff. And that's the second time I've heard that the information coming from realtors might not match what's happening on the ground. And maybe a couple other other task force members represented that too. You know, that's kind of a parking lot item. I mean, all this is parking lot item. We'll get to it eventually in the process. I don't know what to do about that, but it kind of ties in with the community.
Oh, well,
Well,
yeah, and to be clear, I don't think we can remedy that part of it, but, you know, if you look at other, if you look at other things, like oil and gas is very well documented. And somebody could still misrepresent it, but you can always go to COGCC or to the town of Erie and see the actual maps and understand the history of when something was drilled, something was capped, something was plugged and abandoned, what have you. The landfill is a black box for us. And so again, out of lack of information or any other reason, absent concrete information, which I think we can provide, it lets anyone just sort of say what they think, whether that's a private seller, a retailer, a realtor, or just neighbors talking amongst themselves.
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks, Jeff. And I think I wanted to bring it to a higher level of the transparency that we saw reflected in some of the issues. And to the extent we can within this task force, we can be as transparent as we can in service of just sharing information with the community. Lisa?
Well, as a parking lot for that, and as somebody who just purchased a home 4 years ago, I had to sign at least 6 or 7 acknowledgements about everything from the gun range, which was nearby, to oil and gas, to a random radium drill head that's somewhere in the Erie Highlands neighborhood in a hole. I mean, there were a lot of addendums, so maybe I don't remember signing anything about the landfill, so.
Okay.
Remember the golf
But there were,
course?
yeah,
Golf course and the airport.
Yeah.
Addendum
Yeah.
on ours, and that was 17 years ago.
yeah, but the shooting range is right adjacent and pretty
Yeah.
loud. So.
And people want to know what they're getting into. Jeff mentioned Blue Jungle, and I know you
Yes,
can
I,
define
in the interest
Sure.
of avoiding ambiguity and confusion, the Blue Jungle is a colloquial reference to where Waste Connections does maintenance on its fleet vehicles and stores their trash hauling trucks, and it's currently on County Line Road. If you're southbound, when the storage unit is on your right and it makes that jog, to the left between County Line Road and Coal Creek is where the Blue Jungle, the maintenance yard currently is. And one of the things being considered by this task force amongst many is if that is the best place for that maintenance yard to happen, or if there should potentially be some sort of land swap with the town. Whereas we can turn that area into maybe a open space, trails, etc., and do the vehicle maintenance somewhere else more appropriate. One of many subjects we'll get into over the coming 6 months.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And last but not least, Michael.
Hi, I'm here. How's it going, everybody?
Good. Glad we can hear you. Hi.
Yeah, great. Hi, my name is Michael Howard. I live in Erie Highlands. I've lived there for a couple years now with my wife and 15-month-old daughter. So we're happy to be a part of this to, you know, help the town figure out what we're going to do here in the future. My goal to be on this is to help balance the need of the landfill because it's something that as a society we do need someplace to put our trash and but also balance that against the effects on our surrounding communities. And so that kind of leads into whether we can find multi-use purposes of the surrounding land, some of the old Denver regional landfill, if there's additional uses for energy production or new open space or trails, balancing that with the continual operation of the dump in the front range location. Some of the concerns I've talked to people about include just the heavy truck traffic that does go up and down County Road 5, what that effect that's going to have on some of the surrounding road arteries, and just the weight of trucks, how that hurts asphalt, decrease the life cycle of it, requiring additional maintenance, additional repair, and what that effect can be on taxes. And so that's something I'm hearing from people I've talked to about. And also with that heavy truck traffic, you have diesel emissions and also damage from rocks hitting windshields, uh, debris, being ran over, some of those things that do occur on County Road 5, which we know isn't Waste Connections itself, but it is ancillary to it. So uh, those are things that I've thought about, curious to just go through the process, try and take everything in here, listen to Waste Connection, listen to everybody in the community to try and build those bridges so we can work together so we can uh, serve the needs of the community through this landfill, but also serve the needs of the community for everything else that we try and provide. So the one thing that I would be curious for would be understanding some of the long-term emissions controls that they have at the landfill. That's something that I'm curious about to learn more about. So otherwise, I'm excited to work with you guys as we go through this.
Thank you, Michael. And I'm jumping ahead, then we'll jump back, but the topic areas that we'll probably cover throughout the course of the task force are customer and neighbor facing visual impacts, land use and public uses and sustainability. And I'm almost thinking about, there's a lot about what happens outside of the landfill and then what happens inside the landfill. And I don't know how those two things square. But that's my observation there. There are concerns and there are priorities that people have about the roads surrounding the landfill. And then also, Sherry, you mentioned this a little bit more in depth than others of some of the sustainability and environmental concerns too. So we'll dig deeper on all of those throughout the course of our 6 meetings together. And when we close out the meeting, we'll get into some kind of a preview of how we're dividing the topic areas. But this helps us craft our agendas too. And we'll get your input on the agendas as we move forward. Before we want to cover the charter quickly, and then we'll go into presentation by Waste Connections. But any kind of closing thoughts, or I know Lisa, Scott, Sherry, you went first. Anything you want to respond to, or just kind of add on before we move along?
Well, hopefully in their presentation, they'll talk about what the financial impact to the community is from them versus what the cost of maintaining the roads is from town of Erie, as well as, what percentage of your waste in that's coming in every day is actually from Erie? I would guess a very small percentage. Looking at the trucks, Western is coming from Boulder with hundreds of semis a day. And then STS is I don't know if it's a new company, but there I would guess in the multiple hundreds a day of semi loads. I'm not sure whose trash we're getting. But
some of the, and I don't know if we'll get into trade-offs and it's coming to some of the numbers, but noted that that's an information need. So if we don't do it today, we'll cover that soon. Yeah, I hear that. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. I like starting processes. It's a process, but we're all human, and I think if we can just release some of what's on our mind, it helps us get to the topics in a better way. So thank you for sharing and bringing that to the meeting. I want to go back to I wanted to hear from you all before we go into the charter, but I do want to talk about this charter before we get into the Waste Connections presentation. Has anyone not had a chance to look it over? So what the charter does again is it sets some expectations for what your role is, what Kearns and West's role is, what the town's role is, the way we hope to conduct ourselves in the meetings in service of a good process and good recommendations that represent the community. And it makes commitments. It makes commitments on our behalf in service of the task force and vice versa. We don't need to vote on it. We like to get this on paper so that people know what to expect, know what their commitments are, and have a kind of a common set of understandings about what this task force is. Anyone have questions about what's in the charter? Sure.
I have a question. This is on pages 4 and 5 under decision making and defining consensus, and it says absence is the equivalent of endorsing. What if somebody has a health emergency and they can't come and they would not endorse a particular decision?
That's different.
Okay.
No, you're right. And then I think in our effort to be brief here and not subject you to a 30-page document, we might have been too brief there. So absence, if you're not in attendance for a routine, you're just not, you didn't show up without notice or something like that. That's kind of what we mean there.
Okay.
If you didn't show up because you have an emergency or, you know, there's a variety of excuses I think we'll accept. We're not trying to be too strict. Our commitment is to work with that person offline and understand where they might support or not support something.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah.
land better? And we can make that change.
I was confused about that though. I didn't know if you meant to say abstain and abstaining is the equivalent of endorsing, or is it absence in attendance? I was just,
No. And
so if you abstain,
the way.
but
that
generally
this
if you abstain, you're not gonna vote yes or
Abstain,
no
no.
on something. But if
No.
you're absent, is that absent from the whole meeting? I was kind of confused by the sentence as well, Sherry.
And I'll reframe it in terms of so this is a non-judicial body, no one's voting, no one's providing, no one's voting on recommendations.
Okay.
Things aren't passed, things don't move past the task force or not. The hope is that we discuss things, Waste Connections comes with, you know, should we do it this way or this way in the simplest form? And there's a general consensus after discussion and deliberation with the task force that we should do it, you know, that second way you mentioned, or second with some modifications. If someone just isn't present that day, they're removing their voice from the process and we can't make sure, I mean, I will make every effort to make sure someone's there. If someone abstains, that's noted in the recommendations. Lisa abstains from supporting or not supporting because she has these concerns. And those concerns paint a broader picture of all the nuances of an issue that the council can then consider. Our goal is to dig a little bit deeper, like you abstain, and that means that we don't have consensus. How could we, you know, tell us more? And my goal as facilitators to make sure we all have patience and take time to listen to Lisa's concern and why you're abstaining and try to move past that. But this can't go on for years, I'll just be blunt, and if you abstain, unfortunately, that will be noted, and we'll move forward with the consensus recommendation, so the majority of landfill task force members, what they recommend. So
Those
abstaining
recommendations
is,
go to the town council,
Mhm.
correct? And there's no requirement for them to really follow those
they
recommendations.
will consider that when they consider Waste Connections permit application.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to the overall process. The way things have been done in the past, and I'm sure Jeff can speak to this as he was sat on the then Board of Trustees in 2018, is that there's usually a lot of behind closed doors, back and forth negotiations, and then eventually a resolution is brought forth to the elected officials and they voted up or down. The town didn't want to do that, and Waste Connections was not interested in repeating that process. The landfill operations, obviously it's a private business operating with a permit from the town, but it affects so many residents that we thought we should have a more transparent process, a more resident-led and resident-informed process. And so what Waste Connections and the town have come up with as a solution is to bring forth together a resident-led task force. Have you draft up a series of recommendations, what you think should be done. And of course, Waste Connections is a private business that they're not obligated to follow those. And the town, of course, is obviously not in a position to tell them how to do their business. The idea is that you would present those to the town council so that they're informed and well aware of what your recommendations are. And then that Waste Connections will hopefully incorporate those recommendations into a land use application that will be voted on by the elected officials. So
the permit that they have, is that reviewed from time to time, or is that like already set out for the next 20 years?
it can certainly be modified and changed, but without action, I think that the permit would stand until the business expired.
Which is what?
Their business. I mean, how they want to run their business, there's not a time limit. Nobody says Radio Shack has to close in 1997. They
I
just
thought we
do.
did have a close date on this permit.
I don't believe so. No. So obviously at current waste rates, right? Current amounts of trash going to landfill. I don't want to speculate. I'm going to say it's going to be 2-3 decades, but of course that rate would likely change, probably slow down as the landfill neared capacity. And so I have no idea how long the landfill would exist in its with no modifications at all to its permit, but would certainly be as long as they can profitably stay in business.
Yeah, please.
The life of the site is really a function of the available permitted volume.
So there's about 39 million cubic yards of permitted available airspace. So in the extreme, if you took 1 cubic yard a year, the landfill would last 39 million years. If you took a lot more than that, obviously that changes the life. And so it's a function of economies need in the region, and obviously the ability to get maximum density from the available space that dictates the life.
And Scott, your question might be around what's next. It's a permit application to potentially expand or to change certain parts of the physical.
All the things that this task force is under their purview were, that there will be multiple aspects of it. Expansion is absolutely one of them, but the members have talked about some significant issues and concerns and maybe opportunities too as it relates to entrance, litter, road access, the routes that the trucks take, renewable energy projects, other sorts of opportunities, the blue jungle. So this is an opportunity for the task force to and the public to really get in on the ground floor and carve out a future business plan for the facility, which is quite unusual for businesses to do this, by the way.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever, as a resident of Erie, I'm super excited about this process, and I'm very optimistic that the results will be an improvement in operations for the benefit of the landfill, but critically for the residents. And as a resident, I'm excited. So.
Okay, back to the charter. So does that help center us a little bit better? And okay, we'll continue to kind of center us around. What's that?
I'm sure we'll come back to it.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Following up on that, I think that was a helpful conversation. Because I learned a lot, but I'm wondering if it would be helpful for the task force to hear from the city attorney. What is actually in place for these operations, what the town has already agreed to. And give us a perspective there, so we're not recreating the wheel there. And then secondly, is there a way that our recommendations will be able to have public input and comment on them before they go to the town board?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, folks can always, of course, offer written comment on any item that goes before the town council, or they can attend the meeting, which we will advertise well when the things are presented, and folks can comment publicly then there as well.
Great.
And of course, throughout this entire process.
Do you think some of that should be added to the charter, like the public facing pieces, or maybe on the website if it wasn't clear?
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of more coming from my background, but the informal way that the comments are on the website. I don't know if that's a real official public comment process. And so I'm just asking about, is there a more official way, like before our recommendations are finalized, if we could hold a public meeting or something where people can come in and actually talk to us about what they see in those recommendations and what they have issues with or don't have issues with.
I think that's a consideration, and this isn't a body that is, that votes on
Right.
items, and also is kind of an ad hoc body task force that doesn't really meet the requirements of other official bodies within the town, so we've tried to incorporate public comment and have some liberty in how to do that, but what I'm hearing is once those recommendations go out to council, but even before that, there should be some, okay,
Yeah.
so that's a consideration. We'll
What about having a way for like these folks that are here tonight to fill out a small half piece of paper with their thoughts on what was discussed and leave it that we could review it? One of you all could enter it into a spreadsheet so we could see it, all those comments anonymously if chosen, which would probably be most wise.
That's good
But
feedback.
that way we could see what all these folks think after they've been at this meeting and had a little bit more education on what the process is gonna be, rather than having to go onto the website and do it that way. If they could fill them out while they're sitting here and leave them with you, and then you could get that out to us afterward. You guys?
Good suggestion.
I like that idea.
Gabby and her team do, yeah.
Hey, would you guys like that? I know you're not supposed to comment, but you can, yeah.
No, I'll just, off the cuff here, I mean, because we're not tied to requirement, I like to include, we don't have to, it's not like a council meeting where, the mayor controls the agenda very tightly. I'm the facilitator, I'll facilitate, but I do see value in a community process, and I don't think there's a downside for that, and I don't think there's anything preventing us from doing that. So it's in our interest to keep it open and transparent. So thank you for that feedback,
Yeah.
Scott.
That's good. And then one more time.
Yeah.
Everything that gets entered in for the questions for the task force will be visible.
Yes.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. Got it.
Because I don't think we were able to show you the webpage, but if you haven't seen it yet, it's already up and active. So a couple people had already put comments, and as soon as you fill out the form, it's visible immediately on the spreadsheet. So like you said, good, the bad, the ugly, everything will be visible. So just know that. Also, I do have folks watching who would prefer if we pull the mics closer to you all, because we can hear you, but it's just not very loud when the mics aren't in front of you. And then when you all come up to present, if you'll make sure you sit by the mics too, that would be really great. But otherwise, I think that's all I had.
Thank you. Gets a medal for, I know it wasn't easy, everyone had to sit, but she made it work for us, so thank you, Gabby. Is there anything in the charter that folks have questions about or that you can't live with?
So the charter, you've got the initiatives. Yeah, so the charter itself is a separate entity from the initiatives. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, the charter is how we do our meetings.
Okay.
When you'll get an agenda, what our role is as facilitators. I'm hearing some ambiguity around, or just some, lack of clarity around the decision-making and defining consensus, so we'll work on that. Yeah, it's different than.
Okay, so the fluid part, the charter is the charter, and the initiatives is the fluid part.
The initiatives, what the landfill might look like in 20
Yeah.
years, or that's separate, yeah. Okay, Lisa? No? Michael or Jeff, if you can hear us, I hope you can. Any objections to what you see in the charter?
No objection, Michael Howard here, no objection to the charter itself.
Thanks, Michael. Jeff?
Jeff had to jump off.
Oh, okay, all right. And then there were 7. Okay. Thank you for that. I think it's important. I like charters. I think they help us know what we're getting into. So our last big piece is a presentation from Jason. Is it you? Okay. Jason, I know you have slides in your, I'm sure you're well prepared. If there's anything you want to add based on what you heard, please feel welcome, obviously.
All right, thank you, everybody. This is really more of a high-level overview of what a landfill is. We'll have a lot more time to get into the details, but I just wanted to give you a very high level here.
Is there any way that you could show it on that screen? I know I'm not.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
This one?
Oh, there's
No,
a
there's
screen
a
right
screen
here.
right there.
Never-
It's not
never
turned
mind.
on. I think
Yeah.
it's turned off.
Thanks, Kelly.
Which one do we have? Oh, geez. Yeah, this is, then I have to go from my reading glasses to my business glasses.
Sure, it'll turn on to the right one. I think I have to switch, but I can still see her.
Yeah.
Is it on?
It's okay.
So just real briefly, we talked about it. It's a little hard to see, but we call it the existing truck maintenance and parking yard. That's the blue jungle that was referenced earlier. the Front Range landfill and then the adjacent Denver Regional landfill is called out. And you can see up in the northeast corner of the Front Range landfill, there's a little note about future truck maintenance and parking yard. That's what David talked to earlier about a potential property swap. That's a town of Erie property right now, and the thought is if it all makes sense, to swap that to Waste Connections, and then the town of Erie would take over the Blue Jungle property. So just an overall view of the landfill itself. You can see here, there's unfortunately, there's two purple lines, but the outer purple line is the permitted footprint of the landfill. That inner purple line is what's been constructed so far, just to give you an idea. You can also see some different colored dots there. Those dots represent either groundwater monitoring wells or gas monitoring probes that are situated around the perimeter of the landfill footprint. And you can also see the notation of the existing final cover that's located on that south side. So a real again, high level overview of how a landfill is built here. You can see the inset. It's a layer of waste, and then they've got different layers of cover. The intent is the landfill would put down a lift, and they have to cover every day. That soil would be scraped off, but it gets layered every day, so there's no exposed trash overnight. But then you can also see here the black lines and the little white lines going up. Those are pipes, and so it doesn't do it justice here. But the bottom of the landfill, and you'll see it on the next slide a little bit better, the detail. But the bottom of the landfill is built with a clay liner, then a synthetic HDPE liner, 60 mils. And I was telling them earlier, I wish I would have brought a sample with me. I'll bring it to the next one. But that's laid down, and then there's another layer that I wish I had, a geocomposite layer, which is a plastic layer, and it's got a little fibrous top. What that is the leachate collection layer. And so as the waste degrades and breaks down, the liquids fall to the bottom of the landfill. The floor is actually sloped towards those pipes. And then at the ends of the landfill, it all runs down into what's called a leachate collection sump. And so all the liquids would collect there. They're pumped off and treated off site. You can also see here, and I'll talk about it more here in a little bit, but the gas extraction wells, and you've got different layers. You've got the gray layer there, which is daily cover. You can kind of see the pink layer. We call that intermediate cover. So if you're not over a site or over an area for a certain period of time, you would have to go back with an extra 6 inches of cover and make intermediate cover. So you'd have a foot thick of cover. And then the green is the final cover. So moving to the next slide here, you can see down at the bottom, the liner system I spoke to a minute ago, the compacted clay liner with the 60 mil geomembrane liner, the drainage geocomposite, and then there is another layer on top of that. It's not part of the collection system. It's a protective cover layer. It's really just to protect the geosynthetics and the clay liner underneath it. Same thing on the final cover. It starts with a compacted clay liner, then it has a 40 mil LLDPE. That just means it's got a little more flexibility. It's not quite as rigid because there will be some settlement over time. Same geocomposite layer, drainage layer, and then your soils on top. That geocomposite drainage layer is there because even though the soils are there to protect from rainfall getting into the waste, it has to have somewhere to go. You don't want that final cover to get oversaturated, and so it will go into the drainage geocomposite as clean water. Just filters through the soils on top and go into the drainage layer, and that generally flows out to the exterior of the landfill. And then again, just a basic concept of of the gas extraction that goes on. In the next slide, you'll see a picture of a gas extraction wellhead. But you have this landfill mass and what happens from time to time, typically every year, they'll expand their gas system. And what that is a 6-inch plastic pipe that's got perforations in it. They'll drill that down into the waste. And then they'll connect it up with the pipes going around the perimeter of the landfill. They'll draw a vacuum on it, and so it'll actually suck the gas out of the landfill. And it'll send it either to a flare facility to be flared off, or to a facility that recovers the energy. And here's sort of the wellhead. So that plastic piece on the right is the long, and this will go down to not all the way to the bottom. You don't want to get that close to the liner system. There's a much, Sherry, I'm sure you've heard horror stories, but there's a much bigger problem if you drill through the bottom of the liner. So you generally stay, 15, 20 feet off the bottom of the liner. But that will go down, if the landfill's 200 feet, that means it can go down 185 feet. And it's perforated, it'll suck the gas out. And then it goes into the pipe on the left, which runs to a lateral pipe down to the perimeter of the landfill, which takes it to the flare facility. And then again, just in terms of groundwater monitoring, I think, was it Sherry that asked about how many wells and probes we have? I can go back and I can tell you at next meeting.
Sure.
But they are around the perimeter of the site. For groundwater monitoring, you've got up gradient wells and down gradient wells. Up gradient, so you can understand what's coming onto your site. Down gradient, so you can compare it to up gradient. And make sure that the landfill isn't impacting the groundwater underneath. And here, there's not a whole lot to it. It's the same concept. These are obviously outside the waste. Same concept, but it's just a PVC pipe that goes down in groundwater. It's screened at that water bearing zone. And then, as you can see, it's well protected. So they go out and sample those biannually and run results. So just a quick overview of the landfill as it's permitted. This is the full build out of the landfill. It's a little tough to see, but you can see the black lines represent 10-foot contours. Really the landfill height as it stands right now is more or less the peak of the landfill height. I think if you go to the north there, it may be a few feet higher up in that north point, but really what's constructed now is pretty close to the final height of the landfill.
So eventually all of it will be that high?
Well,
Majority of it?
it's a 4-to-1 slope going up from the perimeter up. So you can kind of see in the middle there, that little long skinny piece that juts out to the right. That would be close to the maximum height.
Okay.
And then from there, it would slope down at a 4-to-1 slope down to existing grade.
Jason, 4-to-1 slope, like a 25%.
25%, yeah. So for every 4 feet you go horizontal, you go up 1 foot. And then this next slide is again just a very conceptual part of this task force. This will be revised many times as part of this task force, but it's just to give everyone a general idea of some things that could happen. You can see up there in the northeast corner, the truck yard, that if the property swap would happen, that could be a place for the maintenance truck yard. We show a potential site location off County Road 6. Again, none of this is set in stone, or we don't have any preconceived notions of where it should be. And then even a future RNG campus, and really what that could all be will depend largely on this this group here, the different sustainability features could be out there. Also, it's a little tough to see, but there's a little brown line going around the landfill. That's for future use in terms of trails, biking, hiking, whatever. We've got there are trails in the area that those could potentially tie into. We also show, as part of this potential expansion, the town of Erie water tanks are kind of in the elbow of the existing permanent landfill there. They're kind of covered up, and part of this expansion process would be to relocate those water tanks. Right now, where we show those proposed water tanks, there's a large stockpile there, so the thought is that the water tanks would still be screened from the adjacent areas, so you wouldn't see those from the surrounding communities.
Who's gonna pay to relocate those?
That would be Waste Connections would pay for it if that's one of the outcomes.
What does that mean? There's a stockpile of water? What is
So
the stockpile?
soil stockpile. So there's just a lot of, big, large soil,
Like a berm?
pile there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they kind of like dig down into the topsoil pile, so the tanks would be somewhat obscured
Yes,
from
yeah,
view.
so there's a big pile of soil. The thought is that a piece would be carved out of that soil stockpile
Okay.
and it would kind of be inset
Built
into the
in.
stockpile, so it'd be screened from the surrounding area.
Okay.
Jason, I know this is your last slide, and then we'll cover questions. Anything else on? I don't want to cut you short. I want to give you time to finish before we go to questions.
Nope,
Okay, you sure?
nope, yeah,
Okay.
but fire away.
So you offer a nice technical perspective that you won't get from me.
Yeah, and I will say again, very high level, trying to go through it quickly. I understand this is very important and we will be happy to go through it in much greater detail throughout this entire process. I mean, I've done this for 22 years now. I'm an engineer. I'm already a nerd and I actually have done landfills for 22 years and I love it. I'm very passionate about it. So I will be happy to talk with you guys about any aspect. It's amazing though. Each piece you can have a very long discussion about, the groundwater or the landfill gas, and I'm not an expert on all of them. I would bring in other people I work with who are experts in these specific fields if you have a specific question, but I can tell you I am passionate about all of it.
So you want to increase the landfill footprint by 40 acres.
Again, just conceptual. That's what this shows is approximately 40 acre increase.
Who currently owns that 40 acres?
Waste Connections.
Is the Waste Connections permit to operate within the bounds of does not include operation within those 40 acres,
This
even though
is-
Waste Connections owns it?
Right, this is the Waste Connection. This is what the current permit covers right here.
But you actually own more than that.
Yes, they own the quarter section that's not part of the landfill, that southeast quarter section.
Jason, could you or Mark or Randy Dalton talk about at a high level, we'll keep it at a high level, but the why behind the potential expansion? Because I think Scott's asking, I hear the number 40, what would that be used for?
Yeah, first let's make sure everyone's clear on the
Areas we're talking about that make up the 40 acres. It's hard to see switching between, we take for granted because we've seen these so much.
You
Mike,
all
would you
have-
So this is
Mark, would you mind sitting at the table so that the online folks? can
not
hear
at
you?
all. Okay, so the approximate 40 acres in question that we're talking about is number one, this small notch, this odd looking notch on the west side. Yeah, you'd be the pointer. On the west side of the permitted footprint,
Yeah.
as it stands today, we would not be filling in that notch. The reason there was a notch there is there used to be oil and gas infrastructure there, but that was all granted in. It was properly abandoned several years ago. So that's why the permit skirted around some existing infrastructure there, which is why this odd looking notch exists. That's a part of it. The larger part of it of the expansion would be this internal piece of property where the water tanks currently sit. So Jason, can you point that to them again? If you stare at Jason, well, don't stare at Jason, stare at his pen, is that area.
So it would be on the next slide,
Yeah,
what's
if
at
you
the
go to
bottom
the
of page
next
14,
slide.
it's in yellow.
There you go.
Right? Is that right?
Separate.
So you can see those contour lines where the notch is and then where that corner is, where the water tanks are, that's would be the expansion area.
100%, that's exactly right.
Are the water tanks city water storage?
Yes. Yeah,
Potable water?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's so a lot of towns have water towers to maintain the pressure in the system. Due to the topography in the area, we can actually utilize the rise where the landfill is now surrounding to locate our water towers and maintain pressure for much of the system. I'm not in the public works or utilities departments, and I'm certainly not knowledgeable, but as I said, I'm passionate about having water pressure.
me too.
That's nice.
We've had some preliminary work done to establish the viability of the water tanks, new water tanks for Erie in that particular location there in the southeast corner. And the geotechnical data suggests that it would work, that would work out. Elevation, to your point, David, is also a critical thing. You need the elevation to be able to get distribution, effective distribution. So that was thought through pretty carefully. It may, again, you're not in public works, but I think it may well be an opportunity for the town to resize its water tank infrastructure given the growth.
Yeah.
So this may be a win potentially for the town. Don't quote me on that, but I'm on the mic.
Yeah, if
So we're getting into trade-offs. I think this is kind of the
But if
fun
the,
stuff we.
yeah, if the water tanks are of immense interest, I'm happy to get some engineers from Public Works in here, and they actually know what they're talking about when it comes to the town's water supply. I know that we searched pretty far and wide for a place to locate new water tanks, and it does have to be pretty much the exact elevation. And this is one of the few places you can put water tanks in town and not have to deal with the cost and headaches of water towers
Or pumping.
or pumping. And there are some portions of town that the water does have to be pumped too. But the majority of the town is gravity fed because of these tanks.
I have a question for you. So the future expansion that you have right here, is that working as designed? Has it been set all along? Or was this something that?
We've
come up
looked
with?
at, Cheryl, we've looked at all different types of options for potential growth. So for instance, one of the areas that we looked at that we then subsequently discounted based on feedback actually from the community is an area directly south of the notch that once again, my trusted partner will show you there. So that was an area that we considered, but then discounted. So we settled on the two that we've described, because that notch is just, it's gonna look weird if we finish the landfill out like that. And the other larger area is internal to the property, so it's got substantial buffer. And so we thought that was a benefit. So that was the rationale. I mean, obviously in our business, we're looking to provide for more utility and airspace for the future. So it would be, be irresponsible to not look at it. That doesn't mean to say that the town will approve it.
Okay.
And that's why we're looking for the input and feedback and to assess whether that makes sense or it doesn't make sense.
We have time for, thanks, Cheryl, a couple, so Lisa, and then I'm gonna call on Chris and Cassie and make sure that everyone kind of gets a question in. And we have plenty more meetings to cover this stuff. Lisa?
Was it Jason?
Yes.
Yeah, so back to the discussion about the gas, I'd be really curious about how much you're flaring, how much you're emitting compared to other sources in the town, like oil and gas.
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
And that could be another time with the details, but
We can add more details, because this is definitely an area we're really passionate about, and I spend more of my time these days working on renewable energy projects than any other aspect of my job, which is great. So, and that's obviously not just this site, it's sites across the region that I'm responsible for. But to answer your question, today, we're generating about just shy of 3,000 standard cubic feet per minute of landfill gas. Just short of 3,000. And that landfill gas has two main constituents. One is methane, and the other main constituent is carbon dioxide. So those are the majority constituents in the landfill gas. There's other minor constituents, and nitrogen is present too. So we have an energy plant there today, as you know, Lisa, two engines that are powered by the landfill gas to generate electricity, and that roughly 3 megawatts of renewable electricity goes to grid.
a day?
Yeah,
Okay.
3 megawatts. Yeah, if both engines are running, it is roughly 3 megawatts.
Are you going to United Power?
Yeah, good question. I was just gonna. ask that.
It's currently contract, is it
Yeah,
contracted?
It
with
is, and it's
United?
important
Yeah.
to note that plant is run, so we send gas to that plant, but that is not a waste connection though.
Right, it's run by another company,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yes,
Oh, I
but
didn't know that.
but the plant, it's feeding the grid for United?
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
that's one of their renewable sources. And but that energy plant can only handle, let's call it half, bit less than half of the total gas generation. The rest today we're having to flare. So we're destroying the landfill gas instead of using all of it beneficially. What we're working with the same company that has these two engines to do a much more significant project that actually utilizes all of the landfill gas. And that may likely be a higher value project too, in that instead of generating electricity, we generate basically pipeline spec natural gas, which is a project that I've developed several projects around the country that do that, working with our developers. So that's a project we're actively engaged with. The company is Archaea right now. Another sidetrack and something that is generating more interest. I mentioned carbon dioxide is one of the main constituents. It's not potent like methane is as a greenhouse gas, but we think we may be able to do something useful with the separated carbon dioxide too, and actually sequester, which means drive that CO2 back down into the geology. That's another project secondarily that we're looking at in terms of landfill gas projects here. That's on the second track, but so sorry, I was
Thank
a
you.
bit long-winded.
Yeah, I could ask you a lot more questions, but we could do it another
Well,
time.
I know that there are more questions, and I will probably survey the task force members in between meetings to make sure we kind of craft our agendas and get to your questions, but Chris and Cassie, anything for Jason and Mark?
Mine are pretty simple. When did, like, what year did the landfill officially like open and you guys started collecting waste?
I think it was 1991.
That's my guess too.
I
It's
think-
a guess, we can.
I think 1992, and then that was originally not owned by Waste Connections, so. that was-
Yeah, that was several companies ago, and I think the original permit was with Weld County.
Correct.
And I believe the landfill was incorporated into the town in, I want to say 96.
Sounds about right.
That was before I moved here.
Just one other question out of curiosity, has the entrance always been in the current location it's in?
Yeah, I think
Believe so,
it
yes.
has, yeah.
To my
it-
knowledge.
It has, and I think it was Jeff that was making, Jeff Deacon that sat on circuit board in the past. He touched on a little bit some of the permit conditions, one of which was it contemplates relocation of that entrance within a certain period of time to come straight off of Sheridan and straight into the landfill that way. There were discussions between a prior owner of the Front Range landfill and the county staff at that time to sit tight on that, moving forward with that. And it related to some plans at the time about an extension of a City of Broomfield Road, I believe, was part of the.
Yeah, originally conceived Sheridan was to continue north.
Yeah.
Past County Road 4.
Yep.
And connect. CDOT said somewhere north up to probably County Road 7 and end up to Erie Parkway.
Yeah, south of 6.
Right.
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
plans obviously never
Okay.
came to
They
fruition.
didn't come to fruition, and so, you know, as we've made clear to the county over the years, if they do want us to come in from Sheridan, we can do that. We've got no objection to doing it. We think that this process will help make an informed decision, that to the extent it makes sense to relocate the main access road, what makes most sense? Does it make most sense coming in off of Sheridan, or is another alternative a better alternative? So, we'll dig into that a lot more here in the coming weeks.
I don't see how that would address any traffic issues at all.
We'll talk about that.
I do have a question on this map. Well, I guess the same thing. It's got here that, the road's already there, the yellow line. Is that? That's, yeah, there's a thing right here that.
What's the title on that slide, Cheryl?
It's proposed improvements, it's a separate one.
We have time for just a couple more questions.
Okay.
Cheryl, I'll work with you offline on that one. Okay, Chris, what do you have on your mind?
I'm not sure if it's, right, well, the water test, did somebody say we can see those? Or maybe this isn't.
Yeah, we sampled the groundwater and monitor for any gas migration. A couple of times or more a year. All of that data is publicly available. And so we can certainly facilitate providing that data to this task force.
Yeah, as Mark's saying, we do a gas probe monitoring as well as groundwater well monitoring. Those are both submitted to the state as well as the town of Erie for review.
And Weld County.
And Weld County.
And actually, what's
yeah, we
of
get
more
those reports
interest
semi-annually.
these days is surface emissions monitoring. You know, we were talking about landfill gas capture, and our goal is to capture every molecule of methane that's generated in the landfill. But we also monitor the surface of the landfill, which is of increasing interest to everyone, including ourselves. Traditionally, a lot of people ask questions about groundwater monitoring and gas probe monitoring. Actually, what's more, you know, of interest, I think, to a lot of people these days is surface emissions monitoring. So we do that too, pretty rigorously.
It sounds like some of those technical pieces, even for us, those are of interest and kind of factor into the community benefits and the trade-offs. Yeah. Anything else, Chris?
Are ponds safe? You know, are kids swimming on them? I mean.
So we also do surface water, we have a surface water, a stormwater permit for the site. And so they monitor the discharge coming off the site. That's that's just a general requirement with the state. And so they would be sampling anything off, and then those samples are turned into the state for review.
Our results have not shown any sort of leakage or any, if that was your question.
And if there is, then there'd be corrective
It's a
action.
safety question,
Yeah, exactly.
So like the water
That's it.
going into Frico is good. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, especially now we've spent millions of dollars relocating the Frico or Frico, however you'd like to pronounce it, ditch. So yes, no, it's our water doesn't contact their
Yeah,
water.
no water from the landfill property goes into that ditch. It all comes from offsite.
Because
goes
it's flowing
offsite.
from the east going west. And it's kind of going up that hill and then coming back down. Okay, so,
Yeah, 'cause-
so you don't have to worry about anything coming from the dump going east. going to
there's
the-
no-
because- Yeah, because you can see the old ditch. I have water shares, so that's why I pay attention to this stuff.
Yeah.
The ditch is higher than the topography of the landfill. In other words, even if it runs off the stockpile, it would have to go uphill again to get into their ditch. So it can't flow that way.
So I know there's a lot more questions and, that cover all of these topics that we will, kind of our 4 big themes, and I mentioned these earlier: customer and neighbor facing, visual impacts, land use, public uses, and sustainability. I think these could be refined significantly based on what we heard today, and we'll work with Waste Connections in the town to propose an agenda for the next meeting that pulls some of the concerns that are top of mind. And I don't want to speak out of school right now, but I'm hearing a lot about entrance and a lot about noise and traffic and litter. And my sense is that's probably what we'll cover the next meeting. And I would like landfill task force member input on that agenda and making sure we're kind of prioritizing the issues that might require more discussion. Another approach is to cherry pick things that are easier, but I think that's a big one, and that's what we've heard. Kind of the most discussion around, so we're not gonna, these are just in your slides, what those mean. And I want to adjourn, we're a couple minutes late, but we're all in it together, so bear with me here. Actually, the next time this group will come together is our landfill tour, and that's next Thursday, May 9th, not tomorrow, but next Thursday, May 9th, from 3 to 5. Colin has shared details on accessing that. Randy's gonna be our host. He's gonna host us. We'll have a bus. We'll drive around the landfill and then have about half an hour, 45 minutes for questions and discussion. So we won't meet here again. We'll meet at the landfill next Thursday, and then you can see our meeting schedule. The next 5 meetings are set. My hope is we have all 8 folks here in the meeting, and if you do need to be away, we'll make sure that we can hear you and you can hear us. Let me just say one more thing about in between meetings. You're all bringing things that aren't just top of mind for you, they're top of mind for your neighbors and your boards and committees and just the people you spend time with. And continue to bring those, because you've heard from David and Waste Connections. We're not doing this in a vacuum, we're doing this so it's representative of the community. That's why we selected the task force the way we did. And that the council has a solid view on what's important to Erie residents, people who live here and people who want to preserve the way, want to preserve a way of life that you've come to enjoy. So speak to your community members, relay that information to each other. And then the next meeting, we'll probably cover what I just mentioned, some of those top of mind issues, and we'll put that into an agenda and circulate it and move forward.
So those folks in attendance, if anybody bothered to jot down any thoughts or comments, feel free to hand those to me on your way out. And you might find this door and then up these stairs an easier way out than the convoluted path to get in. I'll